Hello. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. My name is Alan. Thank you all for being here today. I'm joined by my colleagues Anita and Geva. We are representing different products within G Suite, but we're all super excited to be here today to talk to you about process. So it's already Thursday of next, and hopefully at this point there have been a few major takeaways that you've had from this conference. The first major takeaway is that this is all an elaborate excuse to throw a Chainsmokers concert. The second major takeaway, hopefully, out of many, is that G Suite can transform the way your company works. So you've probably heard this a few times now, and it sounds great. But I think a reasonable question to follow up with is how? How does it actually transform the way your company works? Yes, G Suite can create a culture of collaboration. Yes, G Suite has wonderful technological capabilities that your users need. And yes, G Suite can help your users innovate and move faster. But what does all of this mean practically on a day-to-day level for your employees? How does G Suite actually enter into their lives and make their work lives better? We think that the answer lies with process. And when we say process, we don't just mean bureaucracy. We actually mean all the different tasks and interactions that your users are doing on a day-to-day basis to actually do their work and to create value for you and your company. The way we think about it, there are a few different levels of process that we can talk about. First off, there's a large number of fairly simple day-to-day, everyday processes that your employees probably aren't even thinking too much about. So this could include things like pulling data into a spreadsheet, or using a standardized company document, or perhaps creating a slide deck presentation to update stakeholders about a certain project. Over time, some of these processes become a little bit more formalized because they either happen very frequently or they're very important. So this could include things like filling out HR information. It could be filing feedback into a CRM, or it might be something like ordering supplies. And finally, there is probably a small number of very complex, but very vital and perhaps even proprietary processes that your company might have. So this could include things like a proprietary supply chain management solution. It could be scheduling deliveries for your fleet, or it could be some kind of a customized internal approvals process for content that your company generates. So we're here today to talk about all three levels of process here. First off, we're going to look at how docs, sheets, and slides can help make some of those simpler everyday processes much more efficient. Then we'll look at how some of the more formal processes can be helped out by forms. And then we're going to look at how some of those really complex, customized processes can be built using AppMaker. And our hope for today is that after this presentation, after next, you'll be able to go back to your companies with some of these tips and ideas and show them to your users so that they can also benefit from G Suite. So we're going to start off with that body of simple everyday processes, and we're going to look at how docs, sheets, and slides really help with those. And the main way that docs, sheets, and slides can help is by fostering a culture of collaboration. And in order to illustrate this, we are going to walk through a common enterprise user's workflow, and that's going to be the workflow of financial planning. So, everybody's aware that finance teams exist in companies of all sizes, all industries, and generally those finance teams will have some kind of financial planning exercise every quarter or year or so. So today, we are going to tell the story of Becca, who is the CFO of a fictional Solomora corporation, as she embarks on her company's annual financial planning exercise. So as part of this exercise, Becca is going to need to gather some numbers, things like production volumes or material costs, from her company's 10 different plants that are scattered around the world. And she's also going to need to pull in data from external data sources that her company uses. She's going to create some charts and perhaps well-formatted tables out of that, and then use those in a final report or a final presentation for the stakeholders in her company. So luckily for Becca, she knows that this isn't the first time her company is doing financial planning, so she starts off with the Sheets template gallery. All G Suite organizations actually have their own internal template galleries, and users in those organizations can upload templates that they think their coworkers might find useful. And as administrators, you all have the ability to also control who can upload templates into the gallery. So over time, we've heard of tons of great examples from real customers about how they use templates at work. So this could include things like slides templates to enforce company branding. It could be doc templates for standardized documents like purchase orders or legal contracts. We've heard of Sheets templates for budgeting use cases, and we've heard of Forms templates for supply chain management, just as some examples here. So luckily for Becca, her company has actually a very rich financial planning template that she chooses to use to jumpstart this entire exercise. But why does Becca choose to do this all in Sheets? It's actually because Sheets has a number of key features that make it perfect for this kind of exercise. As a reminder, Becca needs to get numbers from her company's 10 different plants, from the managers of those plants. So when Becca and her different plant managers are all working together, they're always looking at the same canonical version of the file. They're always looking at the same file. Moreover, because Sheets is cloud native, they can share the file via a link. They don't need to attach the file to emails. They don't need to check the file in or out of a third-party storage solution. A great thing about Sheets, as well as Docs and Slides, is that there's also a version history, so that later on, Becca can look back in time to see how the document has evolved and who made certain changes. And again, because Sheets is cloud native, there are a number of features to help protect this data, especially with such a delicate or sensitive exercise that she's doing. For example, in this particular case, Becca is okay if individual plant managers can see the data that other plant managers are providing, but she wants to make sure that no manager is accidentally editing information in the wrong tab. So she can actually add protection to each of the tabs so that only that plant's manager can edit that tab. Moreover, Becca can also prevent collaborators from adding additional people to the file, so she can control the reach of this document. And she can also prevent others from downloading or copying the information in the file. So once she has shared this document out with her collaborators, they all begin to come in and supply the data that she's requested. And what's great about Sheets is that they can all be working on the file at the same time without any latency. And moreover, any changes that they're making will show up in real time. And this is a crucial fact for efficient, seamless collaboration. With some competitor products, changes can take up to 30 seconds to show up, which doesn't make for very smooth real-time collaboration. With Doc Sheets and Slides, collaborators can also leave comments or action items, for example, to flag questions or follow-ups to Becca. And so with all of these features, the file essentially becomes a living, breathing conversation as everybody works together on the task at hand. So great, Becca has now gotten the numbers she needs from the different plants, but now she needs to pull in some more data from other data sources that her company uses, so maybe a CRM or an ERP, for example. This year at Next, we are super excited to announce a couple new superpowers that Sheets users have to access their data wherever it may live. So first off, we're excited to announce a new feature to export data directly from SAP into Sheets. If you're curious to learn more about this feature, please visit the URL you see here, cloud.google.com/SAP and G Suite with dashes in between. We've heard from many customers that SAP sometimes contains all of their operational data. It really is the lifeblood of the company, and it runs the company, so to speak. So with this new feature, a user can look at some data in SAP, and with just the click of a button, export that data directly into Sheets, where they have access to all the features that they're already familiar with. So features for analysis, features for asking questions about their data in natural language via Explore, and of course, real-time collaboration as well. Next, we are also very excited to announce a new integration between Sheets and BigQuery. And if you're curious about this feature, please visit gsuite.google.com/bq-sheets. So BigQuery is Google Cloud Platform's enterprise data warehouse solution, which means that it basically allows users to run super fast SQL queries using Google's infrastructure on your data. In the past, what would happen, we've heard from customers, is that this kind of data analysis, would only be possible by a dedicated data analyst team. And any partner business teams that wanted to make data-driven decisions would have to go through that central data team in order to get their help. And this worked okay, but effectively it meant that the specialist data analyst team could become a bit of a bottleneck. But now with this new integration, those partner business teams can get some of these data-driven answers themselves using a tool that they're already familiar with, namely Sheets. So this feature is available in beta today, and we encourage you to consider it if your company is also using BigQuery. And last but not least, we are super excited to announce a new Google Sheets add-on, the Data Connector for Salesforce. This Sheets add-on is made by Google Cloud, and it allows users to pull in reports or custom data queries from Salesforce directly into Sheets. And once in Sheets, of course, users have all the typical features that they're used to. So pivot tables, charts, explore, and real-time collaboration. Moreover, with this particular integration, users can actually make changes to the data in Sheets and then use the add-on to push those changes back into Salesforce. This add-on is part of the strategic partnership between Google Cloud and Salesforce and is an illustration of how we're bringing you powerful intelligence about your customer data in familiar tools like G Suite and Google Sheets. This feature is actually available as a public beta starting this week, and you can find it by visiting the Google Sheets add-on store and searching for the name, Data Connector for Salesforce. So these are 3 new integrations that we are introducing this year at Next, and you can see that they all involve users being able to more seamlessly access their data wherever it may live. So if anybody in your company is using SAP, BigQuery, or Salesforce, we encourage you to go back to those users and ask them to try out these new integrations to experience the benefits there. But now, back to Becca. Becca now has all the raw data from her plant managers and from the external data sources that she needs. But it's still kind of raw data right now. She needs to kind of clean it up a little bit and standardize it before it can be fully useful to her. Luckily for her, Sheets has a feature called the macro recorder, which reduces repetitive work by allowing a user to record a certain pattern of actions that later on Sheets can repeat with just the click of a button. In this case, Becca has been working with raw data from plant managers and from other data sources in the past all the time. So she actually has a set of macros that, with just a click of a button, will clean up everything and standardize it for her. What's great is that Sheets is the only online spreadsheet tool with macros. And in fact, with Sheets, you also get all the other benefits of a cloud-native tool as well. So for example, other users don't have to download a file in order to access the same macros. So at this point, Becca has all the data she needs. It's all cleaned up and standardized and looking good. So she can go directly to the summary tab of her template, where all the charts have been updating in real time as the data has been coming in. But what happens next is even more powerful. In the past, if Becca wanted to use some of these charts in a final report or a presentation, she would probably copy the chart from the spreadsheet file and then go to the document or the presentation and paste that chart in as an image. And this worked okay, but if any of the underlying data changed, then it created a bit of a headache for Becca, because at that point, the chart would be updated, of course, and so she would have to go back to all the documents and presentations where she used that image of the chart, find the charts in those files, and manually, copy and paste the updated version of the chart into the file. So this was kind of error-prone, and it just caused a lot of headache and worry for Becca. But now, G Suite is helping to make this way more seamless and efficient. Now, with doc sheets and slides, Becca can take a chart from a Sheets file, copy it, and paste it directly into a docs or a slides file. And when she does that, she has the option to retain a link from that file back to the original Sheets file. What this means is that if any of the underlying data changes, Becca will automatically see a little update button show up in the docs or the slides file. And by just clicking on that button, Docs, Sheets, and Slides will pull in the latest version of that chart. So this is much less error prone and saves Becca a lot of time and worry. And this is another example of the benefits of using a cloud-native productivity suite. So at this point, Becca has a final document or final presentation ready, but before it's fully finalized, she needs to get approvals from a couple of colleagues. In the past, again, this process was okay, but not great for Becca. She would probably have to save the document as a PDF. She would then have to check that PDF into some kind of third-party solution, perhaps. And then she would use that third-party tool to request approvals from her colleagues. And this was okay, but again, there would be a lot of headache and time spent fixing things if any changes were needed, right? If any changes were needed, if any feedback came in, Becca would probably have to first update the spreadsheet and save a new version of that, then update the document and save a new version of that, then save the new version of the PDF, then check it in again, and then re-request approvals. So again, lots of steps there and a bit of a headache. That's why we are super excited to announce at Next an upcoming lightweight workflows feature from Drive. Using this feature, Becca can request approvals from her colleagues directly from Drive. And when she does that, Drive will automatically lock the file. It will automatically share the file with the approvers, and it will automatically send a notification to those approvers about the request. Later on, after the file has been approved, let's say it's a few months later, people looking at the file can see that the file is still locked, and in fact, the current version was in fact the version that was approved. So this document-centric workflows feature will really streamline a lot of approvals flows that a lot of companies have, and it'll be available in an early adopters program soon. So now at this point, Becca is very happy. She's completed this round of her financial planning exercise, but she's a fictional character. So what does all of this mean in practice? We have been telling the story of a typical finance user's workflow. And we want to point out, of course, that finance teams exist in companies of all sizes and industries. But this story wasn't a hypothetical one. We've heard from customers of all sizes and of all industries that, in fact, they are using doc sheets and slides for their work. For example, Gordon Food Services is a leading food service supplier and distributor. They're one of the biggest players in their industry. And they've told us that docs, sheets, and slides are, quote, the new normal for their company. And their entire team, including their finance users, are using docs, sheets, and slides to do their work. So I'll just highlight here, again, that this means that real companies, even some of the largest companies in their industries, are using docs, sheets, and slides to do their work. And real finance teams are using sheets to do their work. So this has all been a section about how docs, sheets, and slides will really help make some of those simple, everyday processes in your company much more efficient. And it does this by fostering a culture of collaboration, of course, as well as providing some of the enterprise-grade features that your users need to do their work. So we encourage you to take some of the tips and tricks from this session back to your users and ask them to try it out so that they can experience some of the benefits themselves. And so now, to talk about forms, I'm happy to welcome up to the stage my colleague, Anita.
Thanks, Alan. As Alan mentioned, my name is Anita Flanagan, and I am the Google Forms Program Manager. Can I get a quick show of hands? Who in the room is already using Google Forms for your organization? Okay, so there's lots of folks here. Who are and who aren't. So hopefully the folks that are using it, you're going to get some examples that you can bring back to your organization to build even stronger forms and stronger processes using Google Forms. And for those that aren't, hopefully I'll leave you guys with some examples on how you might be able to move your everyday, day-to-day processes into Google Forms. So as we see companies start to migrate onto G Suite, We see lots of different departments, lots of different verticals start to move their processes and simplify their processes, bring them online, make them more efficient and more effective using Google Forms. Anything from a finance team who wants to bring a purchasing approval decision into a Google form, to a customer satisfaction team who wants to get more insights from their clients, to engineering teams who might want to run an early access program with clients. If any of you have ever participated in an early access program with Google, you no doubt have already filled out a Google form as part of that process. So today, for this presentation, I'm going to talk you through some examples in the HR vertical. I worked in the Google's HR team, People Operations, for a long time, and we use Google Forms all the time to simplify our HR processes. In the People Operations team, we had a mantra: find them, grow them, keep them. It's pretty standard HR policy. You want to find great people, hire them. You want to ensure that you're growing them and developing them, giving them lots of training and development, and keep them happy and keep them in your organization for as long as you can. So let's kind of move to the finding talent. We see organizations use Google Forms all the time to build out simple recruiting applications. There's a feature in here that I particularly want to highlight. It's the file upload feature. You can allow your users to submit files into a Google form. So you can specify the file format if needed. That could be a doc or an image. And in an example like this, such as a recruiting form, that form could have CVs, resumes, cover letters be part of that application process. I also wanted to highlight a new update that we've recently launched on the Google Forms team. We heard from our enterprise users that they wanted Google Forms to look and feel more like the branding for their organization. So just a few weeks ago, we launched the ability to customize the theme and the look and feel of the Google form. So if you haven't checked out Google Forms recently, I'd encourage you to go to Google Forms and check out the new customized themes that are available there. So you've found some great talent. Now you want to onboard those folks. There's lots of ways that HR teams can use Google Forms to make sure that the onboarding process is going to run really simply, really smoothly, efficiently, and effectively before that employee even starts on the team. Things like making sure you have the information you need to have their desk set up correctly, to know what their technical requirements are going to be before they start, to know what their training and their learning and development needs are going to be before they start. We see companies use Google Forms all the time to run these simple day-to-day processes in their organization. And I want to give you a quick demo of something that's very important to the Google Forms team. And that is machine learning and how we use machine learning on the Google Forms team. We're always trying to save our users time when they're creating the questions on Google Forms. So if we switch over to the demo machine here, I'm going to create a new question. And you can see the default question type on Google Forms is multiple choice. So if I type a question like, what date will you join us for the new hire training? You can see that the question type automatically switched to date. We're always trying to predict what type of question is that user going to ask. Let me show you another example. At Google, we love our swag. We're always trying to predict what are the options that might be available on a question type as well. So let's try choose your t-shirt size. And you can see there straight away, we're trying to predict what are the options that user might need, and you can very quickly add all of those options in. We have lots of predictions and auto-suggestions in our database, and we have them available for over 14 languages, including Arabic, Chinese, French, Spanish, and we're always trying to grow what we offer in machine learning to save our users time. So if we go back to the presentation, we've found some great people, we've brought them on board, and now we just want to make sure that they have the knowledge they need to hit the ground running. In Google Forms, you have the ability to turn a form into a quiz. And I'm going to switch back over to my demo machine again here and demonstrate how you can turn a Google form into a quiz. So if I go up to the settings up here, you can see across the top, there's a little panel here, and I can just toggle on and off to make this a quiz. Once it's a quiz, I can then go in and provide different answer keys and just define what's right, what's wrong, and I also can give feedback on correct answers or incorrect answers, encouraging people to go back and revise or study some of the onboarding material they might have been provided. Something we're very excited about offering this back to school for our education users is the ability to turn a quiz into locked mode on a managed Chromebook. This means that when a student takes that quiz, if they're on a managed Chromebook, that browser will go into a locked mode, and the student won't be able to do anything else until they've submitted the answers to that quiz. We're launching initially to our EDU users, but over time we expect to launch that to all of our G Suite users. And you can imagine if a learning and development team or an enterprise had a loaner grab-and-go policy for Chromebooks, they could organize that new employees could pick up a grab-and-go, take an assessment as part of their onboarding process, and then ensure that they have all of the knowledge needed before they hit the ground running. So I want to turn this onto locked mode, and let me just demonstrate quickly what that looks like. So this quiz is now in locked mode. If I go to preview that, you'll notice up across the top I have lots of tabs open that would possibly distract me or provide answers to me if I was trying to complete this quiz. If I go to the preview mode, a student or a user will get this pop-up to say that the locked mode is on, and once I start that quiz, everything else will then turn off and the browser will go into locked mode. So when I start that quiz, you'll see everything else has gone up across the top, and the only thing I can do now is submit this question or submit these answers. And once I submit it, everything else comes back, and the person can then go and view the score and see how they did in that quiz. So moving back to the presentation again, I've found some great people. I've grown them. I've given them all the training that they need. Now I want to make sure that I keep them. I want to make sure that I'm keeping them happy. There's lots of ways that you can use Google Forms to run various processes in your organization to check in with your employees. Are they happy? You can run annual surveys using Google Forms. We also see lots of organizations use the kiosk mode capability on Chromebooks with Google Forms. Anything from checking in how the food service is in a cafe to manufacturing floors and allowing users very quickly submit health and safety incidences that might happen on a manufacturing floor. The options are endless when you start thinking about these capabilities. We also know that a way to keep our employees happy is just making sure that all of our processes are running efficiently and effectively and smoothly. Using G Suite and Google Forms, there are lots of add-ons and options to use app scripts to really make sure that those simple processes that you need to run will work efficiently and effectively for you. I've listed a couple of the add-on examples that are available through the add-on options on Google Forms, but there's no one-size-fits-all. There's lots of options and capabilities available to make sure that your unique processes can run for your teams. So that's how Google Forms might be used in the HR departments on your organizations. But as I said at the start, there are so many different departments and organizations that we see start to leverage Google Forms to transform their everyday processes. And one thing I did want to leave you with is a sneak peek on something else that our engineering team is working on. And that's the ability to embed a Google form into a Google site or into any site more cleanly and simply. Again, this was a top feature request from our enterprise users. They wanted a Google form to embed more cleanly into their sites without all the background and on that Google form. So that's something we're working on, and we're really excited to launch over the coming weeks. So before I finish up, I just want to remind folks, we really do value enterprise feedback. We really do read and listen to all of the feedback reports that we get in. So please do continue to submit your feedback through the send feedback option in Google Forms. It's something that we really do prioritize and we really do look at and listen to. And we want you to know that you have a voice in terms of how we prioritize our features on Google Forms. So next up, we have Geva, who's from the App Maker team, who will start to talk to you about how to really build out much more complex processes that you might need in your organization.
Hi everyone, I'm Geva. I'm the product manager for App Maker. We've just seen how sheets and forms each automate work processes that were previously hard to streamline efficiently. But as many of you know, often work involves multi-stage processes and several user roles throughout the workflow, so that you have, for example, an applicant and a reviewer or an approver. Some workflows typically require a few data sources, so they're not just leaning on a single spreadsheet for their flow. And there are sometimes capabilities that are distributed across 2 or 3 of our G Suite products. Customized UIs and flows make our work faster and less error-prone. And to create those, we build web apps with App Maker. One example to illustrate this is an app built by one of our customers, Electronic Arts, to streamline a critical business process they had struggled optimizing previously. Before using App Maker, several sheets were used to track various human resources types required to create many of their games. These human resources include game developers or studio managers, and by checking project calendars in parallel, different humans were juggling to allocate the required resource to the scheduled project. It was tedious and quite difficult for EA to optimize resource allocation, to get the right person on the right project at the right time. After building the app with App Maker, the matching between a project need and available human resources was done by an algorithm automatically. And it reduced the allocation errors and achieved higher efficiency with the resources that they had. In the future, EA are thinking that iterating based on the learnings of how they've optimized the allocation so far would make the application even better by optimizing the algorithm. EA's director of IT describes the value created by using App Maker in their company. Another example comes from ATB. This is a financial institution customer from Alberta, Canada. At ATB, there is a large number of processes that involve a customer-facing employee, team member, sending information requests to the operation teams in their back office for additional information and processing. A leftover from ATB's Microsoft days, many of these requests involve filling a Word document or a form, an Excel sheet that gets emailed to a shared inbox for further processing. This was time-consuming and made it difficult for both the requester of the service and the provider in the back office to track their work. Some of these request types have now moved on to Google Form solutions. And the ones that could benefit from status updates or assignments or flows that need validation or calculation as part of them, for those, ATB turned to App Maker and built apps around them, like the one we see here. For a foreign exchange purchase or sell request, this app gives every bank teller an easy way to request it on behalf of any customer and provide ways to track all the requests. If they're approved, if they're in progress, and when they're due to arrive at the branch. Additionally, this app reads the exchange rates from the ATB website and populates the suggestion box for the currency with the accurate exchange rate for the same day. ATB is using several other App Maker apps for their loan management processes. For example, a banker loan limit checkup is something that they do through an app. Every banker has a cap to how much money they can lend to customers. There is a centralized way to review questionnaires that are given out to loan applicants and match the right product for the customer. While another app does the appointment scheduling based on the questionnaire result with the right representative at the closest branch. As you can see, our apps, the apps that our customers are building are branded with their logos and their styles. So they look as an integral part of their business, their corporate business. A fun fact, AppMaker was developed as an internal Google product. And today we have hundreds of applications internally that run every day at Google. And most Googlers are not even aware that they're using AppMaker applications because the applications all look and feel like any other Google internal application. So this same kind of feeling can happen for every company. The Work Reimagined project leader at ATB also endorses AppMaker in this statement. Let's now take a quick look at how an AppMaker app is typically built. And I will show you how we start building an app from, for example, a simple sheet that we have. So this sheet is what we have supposedly used for tracking projects. And when we open AppMaker, we can choose to create a new app. I've already named this app to-do list. The first step that we usually do is select which data source we want to use in the app. So this app is going to work with our project list. So I'm going to add, to create the data model. It is based on the default database that we provide with the product, which is Google Cloud SQL. I'll name my table, and then I can import the Google Sheet. Use a Google spreadsheet. I can see which ones are available, and for the one that we want to use, we can see the fields. If all of this looks all right, we can create the actual table inside our app. We can easily add more fields if we want to extend what the app will be doing beyond the source sheet. And we can also add attributes. So for example, to the priority, I can select what are the possible values. Say we'd like to work with a four priority ladder. So I add that. And for the next stage of building the app, I'm going to design my web pages. So here we have a palette of widgets. I'm going to show a simple data entry one, which is a form, and I'm prompted for which data source to use for this form. I'm using our single table for this app. And after that, or below, just for simplicity, I'll add a table where we'll see all the projects. This is also bound to the same data source, and I can choose which fields will be displayed in this table. We can also control the layout here. So if we want spacing between the data entry and the table, we can add the number of pixels. You can see the table is now spaced from the form. Once we are done with designing our app, and you see that the fields here are also bound to the data in the table that we created from the sheet, we can generate the application, first preview it if it looks the way we want it to, and then publish it. And I will just move over to the published app that I've just shown you how to create, and we can see that this is the data entry form, and here are the list of projects that are already running, and we can of course add a new project here and see how the app is working. This is top priority today. And I've submitted this project, and you can immediately see it here in the list of to-dos. So if this app had other roles here, there could have been some supervisor or someone else who would look at the list and see how the projects are progressing, maybe send even automatically emails to remind people that they need to complete their projects, let's say by the end of the week, and many other functionalities. So this is the product working as it does for any of your domains. It's available for G Suite Business and Enterprise customers, and also for G Suite for EDU. Back to my slides. Before I finish, I wanted to highlight one area that the AppMaker team is working to improve right now. We know that many application developers in companies would like to build apps that run on any device in the same way that they build applications for desktop web applications. So while we are working on introducing full responsive app design and mobile-specific widgets to the palette, we will provide responsive samples so that you can import those easily into apps that you're building, and also support viewport editing and canvas breakpoints in the interim, so that when you design web pages that are intended to work on mobile devices, you'll be able to easily design the page to fit those formats. To start building AppMaker applications in your company, please check out the Google's developer site and in it the AppMaker section. And finally, I'd like to kind of go through everything that we saw today. We covered the gamut of processes. Started out with Alan presenting the simplest processes that your employees might be doing every day, and showed how docs, sheets, and slides have features that really streamline work processes. We also showed how forms can help formalize some of the stronger processes that happen a lot in companies, for example, in HR departments. And finally, I just showed how AppMaker can be used to build some powerful custom processes in your companies. We encourage all of you to take some of these ideas back to your companies and encourage your users and employees to use all these different products to make your work processes more streamlined, faster, and working with less errors.